Hello, welcome to Around Town Spotlight. With me today is Steven Middleton. Colonel Steven Middleton.
Right.
That's important to add to this because you are a Kentucky Colonel.
That's right. Okay.
Now, tell us a little bit about how does one become a Kentucky Colonel? Because I think most people just think you have to fry chicken.
No, and those new Kentucky Fried Chicken commercials with Harlan Sanders back are terrible and stereotypical of the colonelship. But no, it's the honorable order of Kentucky Colonels. You have to be nominated by a current colonel who's in good standing with the organization, and you have to have done two things for the Commonwealth.
What were your two things that you've done?
Teaching and making documentaries.
Oh, that's a wonderful thing.
Right.
And we're going to talk to you a little bit today about your documentaries.
Sure.
All right. First one I want to talk about is Fire in the Mountains.
Fire in the Mountains. That's a blast from the past, Kevin.
Yes, being that we're both wrestling fans,
Yeah.
I thought, this would be a great jumping on point.
Yeah.
So what was your inspiration behind doing that?
Well, that was 2009 when that was made. I had produced that with my old buddy Cal Harris, who's long since gone from Moorhead. But inspiration, mostly I wanted to do something about wrestling, and I don't know, I always liked the old school, like NWA wrestling and Southern wrestling, and a good friend of mine, John Wise, at the time, was wrestling for that organization. And he was like, well, I'll get you in touch with the guy that runs this organization down in Hazard. And he was a very tragic figure, and he really thought that he was going to resurrect this small wrestling company and make a go of it. And sort of the more he kept talking about it, the more comical almost he became. And that was pretty much it, and that whole thing was shot in about 2 days, I think,
So, were the shows that you had, like the independent wrestling shows that you had shown at, were those also like all set during the same like filming period of?
Yeah, those were all in Hazard, Kentucky, down at the, I believe the Armory. And we came down. We did those first. We shot the wrestling footage first, and we just did that one show. And then we came back and just interviewed the two guys later, which was Showtime Sean Christopher and J.R. Rock. That was my friend John Wise.
Okay. Now the title "Fire in the Mountains." Recently, I do the streaming for Front Porch Picking at the Kentucky Country Music Highway Museum, and I heard them sing a song called "Fire in the Mountains." Was that your inspiration for the title?
A little bit. I wanted to find something that had sort of like mountain theme to it. And I get tired of using or hearing the word Appalachia after so long. I just kept trying to throw things around with mountains and different types of things. I remember we had like a title at one point like Thunder Drop Mountain or, like Leg Drop Mountain, stupid stuff. And finally I was just like Fire in the Mountains because I always liked the old Grateful Dead version of that song. And, that sounds to work. Seems to work. I think now if I could redo it, I'd rename it since that's such a famous title. Because you always try to rebrand everything to be your own.
Right. Well, we'll take a look at that right now.
Yeah.
He missed.
Back in the day, it was a really, really hot area. It was almost a guaranteed sellout every time, and it was just, they were so wrestling crazy. Here it was just always hot crowds, and the fans just, they ate it up. Hazard and eastern Kentucky in general was pretty much a battleground you were almost guaranteed that there was going to be a riot, or somebody was going to pull a knife, or something along those lines. It was a rough crowd. For a lot of years, it was a rough area to work. Some friends of mine, their dad was putting on a fundraiser show, and the promotion they brought in was using Jimmy Valiant, and they talked to Jimmy Valiant and basically told him that I wanted to be a wrestler. I went and met him, talked to him, was impressed, and he invited me to come to his camp in Virginia, and gave me the price and everything, and was I was eager. Of course, then from there it went downhill between that moment and my first actual match. And, so that was my introduction to the wrestling business. The first show we ever promoted as HCW was in London, Kentucky, and it was the most god awful show that I've ever seen in my life. I think it drew 17 people, and it was just horrible from start to finish. Maybe 3 or 4 months into things, we started kind of figuring out what we were doing, and then the houses started coming up, and but it was a struggle for those first few months.
That's that. When I was in high school, before the pro wrestling started, me and 6 or 7 of my real close friends started our own backyard wrestling promotion. It was real famous in most of the cities around here. Everybody's backyard. Ours was the Furnace Mountain Wrestling Association, and we started with a trampoline, but we didn't want our trampoline to be bouncy, so we stacked bed mattresses up under it to make it solid, more like a wrestling ring. And we would wrestle on that every weekend or every time through the week we got the chance. We had an RV that was set up next to it. We'd use that to jump off of as our top rope, as our dressing room. Stayed in character, you know, just as close as we could. I mean, we never had any real serious injuries, a few cuts and scrapes and things like that. I came up with the name when I was still doing backyard, JR Rock, which the J and the R are the letters of my first and middle name, and rock just because I rock. So that's how I came up with the name JR Rock. Me and another guy who backyard wrestled went over and watched the show at Mount Sterling because one of their parents knew a guy who was a manager, gentleman Jim Chadwick, for this promotion in Mount Sterling. So we went and watched them. And he told us to talk to him after the show, so we did. And they gave us all the contact info and told us how much the training would cost and to come back. So me and him went, and we trained that one day, and as soon as I was there, I was like, I'm doing this for good. But you just have to have a love for the business. I mean, there's lots of guys around here that talk about it. Like, there's a guy I work with, and he wants to get into wrestling. He's like, yeah, I couldn't see myself doing anything but being a wrestler. And I think he's under the impression that if he gets in it, he's going to go straight to WWE or straight to TNA. Which I told him, I was like, if you get in, it's going to be a long, hard road. I was like, you're going to be doing indie promotions. I was like, if you want to go to one of those, you're going to have to give up everything you got here, and you're going to have to travel to Connecticut or to Florida. I think most of them are realistic and don't have any intentions of becoming famous. And if they are wrestling there now, there's a possibility they may have been famous, but they're at the end of their careers now, or they wouldn't be working for these companies now.
They're basically down to the core fan. The fans basically that are going to go out of loyalty or just because it's wrestling. And that's, those fans are, you can pretty much count on them to be there and be a part of the show. A lot of fans now become fly-by-night fans. They're sports entertainment fans. And those are not always the best fans to work in front of. But when you've got the fans that love it, truly love it, like the old school, they're the best fans to work in front of. And there are still a lot of those out there that make the shows fun. What irritates you is when you're going out there, trying your hardest, trying to give them a good show, and you're in the middle of a promo or something, and you're trying to get the story across, and all of a sudden this "what" chant breaks out. And sometimes that makes you just want to throw the microphone down and walk off and say, forget it, it's not worth it. But for the true wrestling fans, it's still a lot of fun to go out and perform in front of them. For a long time, Somerset and Pulaski County was like our second home. And when we would go down there, the fans would come in, they knew your name, they knew everything about you. It was like, even with the fans, it was like a family. They would would come in and would talk to you and would ask questions, would ask to help set the ring up and help tear it down. And then they would still go out front and buy a ticket and go out and still get worked up and part of the show. And they're just, those people are a dying breed. There's fans that come to shows and stuff that you could probably say, well, who's Harley Race? Who's Jack Briscoe? Dory Funk Jr.? They'd have no idea. No idea who those guys are. That's what's sad, is that they don't care. Some of them don't care about the history. A lot of the fans today think the wrestling business just started 5 or 6 years ago, and it's been around since the 1800s.
Well, a lot of people say Vince McMahon saved the wrestling business, made what is it. I think he's the one to put it in the toilet. He destroyed regional wrestling, and I think that was the greatest thing ever. I mean, so what, you weren't a national star, but everybody had their territories, everybody had their favorites. I mean, you could travel here and there, and it was a lot more closer knit, because there'd be 3 or 4 guys you'd travel the circuit with all the time. It'd be like brothers with them. You don't have that anymore now. I mean, there might be 1 or 2 guys, maybe 1 guy you'll go to shows with all the time and become close with, but it's not like it was. So I think it's horrible now.
The general rule of school of belief is that wrestling ever so often has it's a cycle. The wrestling business runs in cycles. It may be up, you can draw really well, do really good business 5-6 years, and then it'll bottom out. And usually it's looked at maybe every 5-6 years the business will go through that down cycle, and then will build itself back up. This is the longest down cycle that there's ever been, and it's due to lack of competition. There's nothing out there. Unfortunately, now it's very hard for an independent promotion to get the fans to give them a chance, because most guys on the indie scene are not 280, 290 pounds, are not jacked up, and the fans look at indie guys as being amateurs or not being real. And we have the same license that the WWE guys have. We have the same license that the TNA guys have. It's just we don't have millions and millions of dollars backing us.
HCW Championship Wrestling presents the International Heavyweight Championship. Saturday, April 25th in Williamsburg, Kentucky. Zodiac versus J.R. Rock. With no time limit and no disqualification. Also featuring one night King of Kentucky tournament. Don't miss the excitement at HCW Championship Wrestling this Saturday night at 8 p.m. at the National Guard Armory in Williamsburg. All seats $8. Kids 5 and under $1.
Yeah, if your dream is to go national and be competition, then yeah, it takes a lot of money to keep a company running. Even on the indie level, it takes a tremendous amount of money to keep a company running. The hardest thing that I've found in trying to book shows and stuff it goes back to Vince McMahon and the WWE again. Sponsors, the school groups, police departments, fire departments, they see this stuff that's went on over the years, half-naked women, the swearing, the vulgar gestures. They see that on Monday night. They equate that with all wrestling companies, and it is next to impossible to book a school now. Most of the time you're relegated to National Guard armories, buildings that you have to outright rent to go in because the schools won't touch it. When you're in these small communities and the jobs are disappearing, it's really bad for business.
He's talked to me about that several times, and I told him, I was like, if you don't think you can do it, all you can do is close the doors. You can go until you can't go anymore.
The way I look at it, and I think a lot of the guys that are in the business right now, I love the wrestling business. Always have. And I believe and figure that everybody else should love it too. But that's not always realistic.
Now, how many more years do you see yourself in the business?
Maybe one more year at best. Yeah, it's pretty a laundry list of things that are wrong. 5 bone spurs in the neck, 2 bum knees, 2 bum ankles, left ankle that was broken twice, separated shoulder, broken ribs, and after 15 years it definitely starts catching up. I look back on my career, I don't have anything that I wouldn't change a whole lot about it. I can look back on it and say, did I get to meet all my goals? No. But did I meet a lot of them? Absolutely. Did I surpass a few things that I thought I'd accomplished? Absolutely. The first time that I got ranked in the Pro Wrestling Illustrated Top 500, I never dreamed in a million years that would happen. The first couple of times that my picture was printed in a magazine, that was something I dreamed about since I was a little kid. 15 interesting years, I'll say that. Some good, some bad, always interesting.
And Stephen, that was actually a very good documentary. I'm sorry, that sounds like I'm putting you down on that, but that is not.
Well, that documentary actually, Kevin, was won the best short film at the 2010 Appalachian Film Festival, and it was shown at the Hot Springs International Documentary Festival in Hot Springs, Arkansas, which is still one of the largest documentary festivals in America. So I had quite a good run with that one.
It paints a very human picture of what the independent wrestlers have, because usually people see like WWE and formerly WCW as well. Yeah. They think these larger than life characters, and this is just very a guy looks like you or me, getting out there, and jumping in the ring
for the worst probably. But yeah, for sure.
All right, we're going to take a quick break here, and then we'll be right back.
Welcome to Archer Park in Prestonsburg, Kentucky. Here you can find a number of amenities to suit your leisure and exercise needs. Enjoy our vast tennis court with several play areas so that you're never waiting too long for your next set. If you're in the mood to enjoy a meal with family or friends, we have several sheltered areas with grills. And for the young and young at heart, we have several areas of playground equipment to suit younger and older children. And Clark Hall is home to an indoor basketball court, as well as the Happy House Adult Day Center. And for those very hot days, take a refreshing dip in the public pool. We have several open areas for a variety of activities, or the fenced-in dog park for your four-legged friends. And come pay your respects at the Floyd County War Memorial. And during our holiday season, check out our phenomenal lighting display with our annual Christmas in the Park event. So when you need a getaway from your getaway, come down to Archer Park, where you'll find a variety of activities to suit your needs. Archer Park is located at 66 Archer Park Road, Prestonsburg, Kentucky. Welcome to the Dawkins Line Rail Trail, the largest rail-to-trail in the state of Kentucky. Featuring 18 miles of scenic beauty from Hager Hill in Johnson County to Royalton in Magoffin County, the trail is open to hikers, cyclists, and horseback riders. Along the route are 24 trestles from the former rail line, as well as the 662-foot Gun Creek Tunnel. Special events at the trail include bike rallies and marathon runs, but the trail is always open to the public. So when you plan your next excursion, bring a buddy and head to the website below for directions to the trailhead of your choice.
All right, and we are back here with Steven Middleton. Another one I'd like to talk to you about is Zen Furnace.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about that documentary.
Well, oddly enough, Zen Furnace and parts of Fire in the Mountains were shot in the same area, which is over on Furnace Mountain Road in Stanton, Kentucky, Powell County. And it was working with John Wise on the wrestling documentary, trying to come up with another idea. He one day said, he's like, well, there's a Buddhist temple out here close to where my grandparents live. on Furnace Mountain Road, and I'd been out there before, and I was like, man, that's an odd place for a Buddhist temple. So, the beauty of the internet, I looked them up, sent them an email. Next thing I know, we drove over there to check them out, and started making this documentary about this group of Zen Buddhists that live in the mountains of Powell County on Furnace Mountain Road. And their retreat center is called the Sweeping Zen Retreat Center. And wonderful people. Zen Master Degok was the leader of the congregation, I guess you would say, and various people live there. And you could come and go, and people would come and do retreats there, and hermitages and things like that. But sort of the documentary idea was kind of juxtaposing Zen and peace in the mountains with the local people not really understanding who they were and what they were. And everyone thought they were terrorists to devil Satanists, One guy even told us that they secretly are having chicken fights up there. So that's kind of the story of that Zen Furnace documentary. It kind of showing you these really peaceful people who enjoy the beauty of the mountains and love everything about Eastern Kentucky, but with the natural people of that region not really understanding why they were there and what they were doing.
Yeah, that's it's one of those things that they always say. People are afraid of what they don't understand.
That's right.
But let's see if we can enlighten some
sure.
people with that. Here is Zen Furnace.
You didn't hear too much about it. They just moved out there, but I haven't been out there and don't know nobody that goes out there. We lived here in Powell County, and then we moved back to Estill County. And then we went to Stanton. We owned a trailer park down there, so we moved down there. And then we was down there 9 years, and we moved back up here. So we've been up here 26 years, the last of this month. They call it Furnace Road now, or Stanton Road. No, it's Furnace Road, they call it. But it used to be Stanton Mountain.
Noten Ridge.
Yeah, Noten Ridge out here. And then they changed it. They've changed our address about 3 times since we've lived here. Or 4. So it's Furnace Road, yeah.
Take a trip with me to 1913. To Calumet, Michigan in the Copper Country. Take you to a place called Italian Hall, where the miners are having their big Christmas ball.
Kentucky is horse country, and Powell County is right in the middle of the Dandy Boone National Forest. So we gravitated just by the expressway into Powell County. We liked the area and everything, and we bought property up here to bring our horses down.
Well, the county's cool. I like all the little back roads and stuff like that. I don't care a lot about some of the officials in the county, but it's mostly all right.
There's been a lot of new people come in here and built new homes and everything, and there's a lot more drugs. And the young people that didn't do drugs and drink back when I was growing up, they do it all now. So that's been the switch in Powell County for us.
See what your
like I said, I had talked to a lady that went out there and stayed out there, and she talked about renting from me. But I haven't seen her. I don't know what happened to her. But I haven't been out there and don't know nobody that goes out there.
Okay, I understand that it was a group from Lexington came out in this area, and they purchased property up on what is now Furnace Mountain. They brought timbers from warehouses out of California. I think it was San Francisco. Big, huge, solid logs were shipped out here, and the temple was built to specifications using this old timber.
Never heard much about it, just heard it was there. I think local people think there's all kinds of things that goes on out there that don't. I think they think there's stuff like voodoo and sacrifices and stuff like that.
I'd say the majority of local people don't have any clue what goes on out there. They just hear rumors, and most people I've talked to don't even know where it's at. They just know, oh, there's a Buddhist temple up there in the mountains somewhere, and that's as far as they know anything about it, I'd say.
I'm sure they know about it. I think there were several articles in the local newspaper about it that described, what was going on there and who was involved and everything, to kind of get rid of these rumors and stories that were going around at the time.
But I decided I was going to go out there one day. I was out riding motorcycles around, so I'm going to stop by. And the gate happened to be open, and I rode out through there.
I was born in Massachusetts, Ludlow, or I was actually born in Springfield, Massachusetts, which is outside about 100 miles from Boston, and grew up in Ludlow, Massachusetts. Grew up a Congregationalist, so there was a kind of sense of being. I always wished I could wear one of those crucifix, or actually I guess it was St. Christopher was until he was kicked out, but. I always wanted to wear one of those chains around my neck because all my friends had those. I went to graduate school at Kent State in Ohio, and I was there when in 1970 when the students were murdered. In fact, I was teaching a class that two of the students were going to that were murdered. And that was a big change, huge change. I was married, and a huge change in my life. And so I taught at EKU for 6 years, got tenure, and I guess I'll just talk about my life. And I was married, and my wife had what's called got pregnant. We adopted a baby, and then 5 years later, she had what's called an arterial venal malformation burst in her frontal lobes. And she lost the baby and survived, but changed drastically. And so we separated and divorced. So there's kind of two main crises, I would say, that precipitated a question, doubt, like the killings at Kent State. And then to lose a baby and lose a marriage and actually lose a wife was, again, a crisis of irreconcilability. The kind of where the mind comes up against what it expects is going to happen and it doesn't. And I went to Providence, where my teacher was, to what I thought was a Zen retreat, and it was called a Kido, K-I-D-O, and it was an energy retreat. And everybody had these pots and pans, and they were chanting, Kwan Sem Bo So. And I thought, this is crap. And their cushions were red and green and yellow. And on the altar, they had a fiberglass Buddha and Christmas lights. And I had come from a place with these amazing works of art, and every detail was completely taken care of. And this was just funky. I mean, really funky. And I thought, this is not for me. On the way home, having decided that I would never go back on the airplane with my wife, I was sitting there, and for the first time in my life, I was just sitting on the airplane, nothing else. And this tremendous sense of freedom appeared, and I knew that this was my teacher. So we wanted to find a retreat center that would we could go to, that would be a strong practice center. But so you want to search for a spot that has balance. Okay, some temples in Korea are oriented toward the masculine, some are oriented toward the feminine. So, and some are balanced. This is a perfectly balanced spot. And when my teacher first came here, he thought that we should put the temple where the big pond is as we came in. And we walked up to the top. And he has diabetes, he had bad diabetes, so walking to the top was hard for him. And he got up there, and he looked out at this, and he couldn't believe it. He was literally shaking. And he said, if this was in Korea, people would flock here because of its auspicious characteristics. And people in the area don't understand why we're buying it. And they say, what are you going to do with it? And we say, nothing. And they say, well, are you going to farm it? And they think we have some hidden motive, like maybe there's gas or coal or oil or something, and we're really going to do nothing.
Oh, hard is the fortune of all mankind. They're always controlled and they're always confined.
I was living in Australia in the mid-90s, and that's when I first met Zen Master Degak, who's the teacher here. He was in Brisbane, where I was living at the time, giving a public talk, and my husband and I, he picked up a flyer in a coffee shop one day. Not much happens in Brisbane, and he said, we'll go and see this, this will be interesting. I said, okay, yeah, that sounds kind of interesting, Zen Master. So we went along, and it really caught both of us.
I wanted to know, how's this chemical process of, what happens in the brain with chemistry and electrical firings and stuff result in some notion of person, I, me, you, things. How does it result in the world of ideas and concepts when it comes down to physical chemistry? So I started studying neurology, and after a couple of semesters I realized I don't have a clue. I can't answer that question. And so then I looked into psychology, and the same thing. I went for a couple of semesters and thought, no, they don't know either.
And I've been practicing Zen ever since, basically, in Australia, then in England, where I was living for about 7 years before I came here. And I was the abbot of a Zen group in Bristol, in England. And we've been here 4 years, so about 6 years ago, Zen Master Degak was in England leading a retreat with us, and he said, I'd like you to come and help out at Furnace Mountain, I need people to help me run the place. And I said, there's no way, I can't, why would I move to Kentucky?
And then my story gets quite bizarre, because I ended up, I moved back to Washington, D.C. area where my family lived, because my parents were getting older and I wanted to be close to them. And I got a job working for an order of Catholic sisters. And so I was working for these women, and I was incredibly impressed by them.
And that was at the start of this 4-day retreat. And the last day of the retreat, I said, okay, sure, I'll do it, why not? And it took about 2 years for us to sort of extricate ourselves from our lives back in England. And yeah, then we came 4 years ago and have been here ever since.
Let me give my life energy join my life energy with what these women are doing. And so I became a sister. And I entered this order. And it was and it was wonderful, and I really loved them, and I loved their work, and they seemed to be rather fond of me. And that is how I ended up being sent to Louisville.
living here, I've got to, you know, experience more of Kentucky and realize just how beautiful it is, the countryside out here. So I love that. I love the quiet that we have out here. I really love the down-to-earthness of the people, the friendliness of the people, that you go into the post office and everyone chats, and there's that sort of southern old-fashioned politeness too, where people open the door for you and say ma'am and sir and all that. And where I come from in England, it's not like that. People are rude and silly and kind of...
Eventually, someone in Louisville told me about this place in eastern Kentucky, and she couldn't remember what it was called. She thought it was called Bathtub Mountain. so I sort of started trying to figure out, well, where was this place? And finally, found out there was Furnace Mountain. And so I went to Furnace Mountain's website, and I thought, oh my gosh, that place is so remote. What if the guy's a lunatic? I don't know if I want to be out there in this isolated, remote place. So I went, and in fact, I thought, here's a teacher who's really worthy to study with. It was getting to the point, as a Catholic sister, I had 2 years of novitiate, and then you have 5 years under temporary vows. And so I was coming to the end of my 5 years of temporary vows, and at that point I would have to make permanent life vows. And I was coming up and doing retreats with the guy kept saying to me, you can't take permanent vows, Mary. You can't do it. You're not really Catholic. I would say, yeah, I don't know. I know that, but it doesn't matter. What does it matter what one believes? And I still feel that what we believe, the ideas that we have in our head, are somewhat irrelevant. It's how we function in the world and what we do.
I think there are people who disagree strongly with what we do. Most people don't know what we do. There have been rumors about what we do that are wrong. But we've been here 25 years. We are good neighbors.
What I like about this place is that it is really unusual to find something like this in eastern Kentucky. You know, if you're in upstate New York or you're in California somewhere, there's Buddhist centers of every kind of kind, Zen centers and Dharma centers of different kinds. But if you're a person in Kentucky or Ohio or any of the neighboring states, really, there's nothing.
The other day, a local family came up. There were about 6 people, and a member of the family had died, and his request was that his ashes be thrown off of our state rock. So the family came up very tentatively, to ask, would we allow them to hike up to the top of the rock and throw his ashes off? Well, we have no problem with that. And they seemed surprised, and they said, the local people said you'd run us off the land. Well, I don't know where that would come from.
Young people come, particularly who come from areas in Kentucky where they stand out like a sore thumb. They're from some small rural town, and for whatever reason they don't fit in with the church that they were raised in or with their family, but they have a very profound spiritual interest, but it doesn't fit within what's available, to them. And so they fall upon this place as like an oasis.
This is home to me. I hope to live and die here. I think that this is Furnace Mountain is the place that I feel I would like to give my life's energy and support to the support of it, and to making this possible for people to come and make retreat here. And this is home base.
Many people who hear about this say, why would you make a Zen center in Powell County, Kentucky, in the foothills of the Appalachians? And that's a question I get wherever I go. And when anybody ever comes here and looks out, they don't ask that question anymore.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I hope that it'll survive, it'll continue. It's a challenge maintaining a Zen Buddhist center out in the middle of rural Kentucky. You know, it's not a hotbed of Buddhism, as we've kind of been talking about. So I think for it to find some sustainable way of continuing to exist out here, and yeah, maintaining a sense of being linked into the area. We have a lot of people come from long distances to practice here with us. We've got groups in like DC and in Texas, and people come from Europe and all over. But I guess personally, I would like to see us continue to extend our sense of links with local people and the community that we're in.
You know, my intention with regard to the land itself is to preserve it. I think that in the future, there will be very, very, very few old growth forests.
At the moment, we're a retreat center. We offer monthly retreats. We have a week-long retreat twice a year. We have a 1 month-long retreat once a year. You know, that's the current manifestation. Sometimes there's talk about being a training center as opposed to a retreat center, so that people could come and make a residential stay and actually have some kind of ongoing Zen training. Maybe that will develop. My hope is, I don't know that I care all that much about whether we take this form or that form. My hope is that it will continue to be a place where people can come and really look at what does it mean to be alive? You know, what is this? What is this incredible miracle of who we are, and how do we live it? And as long as we do that, I don't care, you know, what form it takes.
That was a very enlightening documentary, Stephen.
Well, that was the point, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
it's Zen, it's enlightening. Yeah.
Thank you for being with us today.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you, Kevin.
And we will see you back here again next week when we talk about Commonwealth Curiosities.
That's right. And check me out online. I have Twitter. I have Instagram. I am at State Run Media PR on Twitter and at State Run Media on Instagram. And I have a Vimeo page, so you can see all of these documentaries, and if someone is inclined, can purchase them. So,
well, there you go. All right, we'll see you back here next week around town.